Hey Friendaruskis, welcome back to a Monday episode of Hot News. Hope you enjoyed your weekend. What'd you get up to? Let me know down below in the comments. And a lot of you probably got up to worrying and fretting over the RTX 3080. Besides the fact that a lot of you can't get your hands on them, it turns out that there may indeed be some issues with it. We actually talked about this over on our Friday episode of Hot News, but we got more information that came out over the weekend regarding why RTX 3080s are crashing, not necessarily dying, but still having an issue with the cards. On Friday, it was speculated that you just had to reduce the core clock, but now we have more concrete details thanks to other YouTubers looking into this, as well as manufacturers responding to the issue, which is, if you look back here on the backside of the card, you see here we have some capacitors, and it turns out that the configuration of these capacitors is what's causing the issue. Now, my MSI Gaming X2 actually doesn't have a crashing issue, but that is because apparently of the layout of having 5 SP caps plus the bank of 10 MLCC capacitors. And that essentially is what it boils down to. The AIB design capacitor choice apparently is what's causing these issues. The companies that decided to go with 6 SP caps are the ones that are having crashing issues beyond 2 gigahertz. The ones that decided to use 4 or 5 SP caps plus the bank of the MLCC is actually apparently safe. And then you have cards like the Asus TUF or the upcoming Strix, which has no SP caps whatsoever and has MLCC banks altogether. Now, that's essentially what it boils down to. However, there are a few things that we just kind of need to calm the playing field with here first. So there's a lot of people being like, the cards are faulty. That's not true. You're not supposed to necessarily be able to hit 2 gigahertz. There's nowhere on a spec sheet anywhere that says that the cards can reach 2 gigahertz. Now, a lot of people are also saying, but they're crashing at stock. It doesn't appear that most cards are crashing at stock, but rather under some sort of overclocking load. Jay's 2 cents has his video right here where he breaks down all of this and examines all of the different cards. Buildzoid actually walking through what he thinks the problem is with this, and he essentially puts the blame on Nvidia, not the AIB partners, because apparently in the reference spec that Nvidia sent out, they said that 6 SP caps would be totally fine with no issues, which technically, let's not necessarily get ahead of ourselves, is technically true. You can run it at base and boost clocks. What you cannot do is achieve an overclock that is not promised to anybody, which is a key thing to keep in mind. The cards, for the most part, are running fine at stock. It's when they're overclocked a little bit too much. Now, there's some information on the internet that is pointing to the fact that it might be GPU Boost 3.0 that's leading to these cards that are having stability issues. However, Paul's Hardware did a test of several different cards and found that even though he has 2 cards that have all 6 SP caps, that actually didn't happen. There was more instability when it came to overclocking, but not when it came to actually just running the cards at stock. He pointed out that both the Gigabyte and Zotac Trinity cards that he had were totally stable. It was the overclocking that was the issue, which could come down to GPU binning, not just the SP cap information. And for those of you who I've seen post this out on the internet being like, why did AIB partners cheap out on SP caps? Well, truth be told, if you have a breakdown, there's tons of information on this on Reddit with a lot of electrical engineers chiming in on this. SP caps aren't necessarily cheaper. MLCC can actually be cheaper in certain circumstances. So it might not be that it was actually a financial motivation, but it could have just been a simplicity motivation where installing the SP caps is easier to make a board with as opposed to the MLCC, and not necessarily something that would have been wrong in the first place. And considering the fact that number 1, Nvidia said that it was totally okay, and number 2, Nvidia actually had to approve these boards to get them sent out, is actually pointing to the fact that this rests on Nvidia, not the AIB partners necessarily doing something that was lazy or cheap. And then we could also consider the information that AIB partners actually didn't get drivers to test the cards until the media did. So they only had as much time as pre-release samples did to get these cards actually configured and properly situated, which led to certain instances such as EVGA here, who said that they actually found out about this in QC testing, which led to their For the Win 3 cards being delayed because they didn't get the information early enough. However, once again, this is not necessarily leading to issues where the cards are faulty at stock. stock, but rather that they can't be pushed beyond where they are currently. And then if we just want to look at the responses of the different companies, EVGA is the one who had the most direct response to this issue. Asus not saying anything because obviously the TUF and the Strix cards both have 6 banks of MLCC, so they're totally fine. MSI acknowledging the issue, but saying that it might be a driver issue. Zotac saying that they're investigating it, but it's not necessarily something that they're going to fix right now. Galax stating that they're going to make sure that all of their cards are set up with 5 SP caps plus the MLCC capacitors. Gainward saying that they're also working on this issue, and Inno3D saying that they don't have any instability problems with their card at the moment. So that's where we are. Yes, there does appear to be overclocking issues with the RTX 3080 when it comes to how the capacitors are designed on the back of the card. However, this does not necessarily mean that all cards are faulty, and this does not necessarily mean that you can just look at the back of the board and be like, hey, my card's going to absolutely work. It's not quite that simple. There are some SP caps that are higher quality than potentially the ones that are being put on the cards right now, and just because they have SP caps doesn't necessarily mean that it's actually going to cause an issue with the card. But that's essentially the breakdown, and has to do with the overclocking frequency with the capacitors on the back of the card, but isn't so clear and dry that we can just point at the AIB partners and say, you cheaped out. This is actually more or less going straight back to Nvidia and saying you gave a reference spec that leads to worse overclocking, and in some anecdotal evidence leads to the fact that GPU Boost 3.0 might actually crash the card, which means that there's issues at stock, but that hopefully can be fixed as easily as a driver update. If not, it will have to be a VBIOS update, and then it likely will have to be fixed straight from the factory from the card. So it does appear that the first batch of cards has some teething issues with this brand new architecture, but when being an early adopter, have you never experienced that before? Let's not necessarily let Nvidia get away with this, but at the same time, don't necessarily think that this is something that's unfixable at this point. So let me know what you think of this issue down below in the comments. Do you have a 3080? Are you having these problems? I want to hear from you down below in the comments, but let's also talk about the fact that it appears that the 3060 Ti has been confirmed, not from Nvidia directly, but video cards kind of doubling down on the fact that they've had it confirmed by internal sources that are saying that the 3060 Ti should come out sometime towards the end of October, and there's no word on whether or not an RTX 3060 is going to get dropped anytime soon, but 3060 Ti is going to be the mid-tier card from Nvidia this generation. Let's also talk about the fact that apparently GameStop is now selling computer components with Cooler Master appearing on their store with TBD release dates. We don't necessarily know how far this is going to go. Are they going to start selling actual computers, or is this going to be something that they'll have in store? GameStop taking your Ryzen 9 3900X and giving you $5 towards the new SSD, my friends. You got this. And then let's talk about the fact that the HP Reverb G2 VR headset is apparently going to start shipping out in early November for pre-orders. This is according to an AMA that HP did over on Reddit, essentially saying that they should have shipped to resellers at the second half of October, with consumers getting it in November. What you can get in October is apparently Amazon's Luna gaming service, which is supposedly going to be in the Netflix of games, but we got more details about it, specifically surrounding the GPU that's running it, the Nvidia T4, as well as the list of games that it's going to host. The Nvidia T4 is apparently an 8 teraflop GPU. In case you're not familiar, the Nvidia GeForce Now streaming service uses the Nvidia T8, which is essentially a 2080 Ti with faster memory, but they've already been confirmed GeForce Now is going to be upgraded to Ampere. T4 obviously on Turing, which is kind of weird to launch when Ampere's come out. GeForce Now likely still going to have the better actual performing cloud gaming service, but you know, that's it's a different subscription model. Anyways, we could also talk about the list of games. Here's essentially the list. We'll leave a link in the video description for you to check out. There's not much here that gets me all that excited. I don't know that I would pay $7 a month to have access to what appears to be about like 30 games, especially games that aren't necessarily huge hits or big titles, but it might be a starting point. We might see this develop, but considering the fact that Stadia has been out for nearly a year now, I wouldn't hold my breath on this. And if you are SMIC, which is China's fabrication facility, you shouldn't be holding your breath that the US is going to allow you to sell to US companies, because as of the weekend, the US government has officially imposed sanctions on SMIC, which means that you cannot trade with them. They're on a trade blacklist. So now not only can Chinese companies such as Huawei not buy from TSMC, American companies cannot purchase from SMIC, further restricting trade agreements between the technology companies. We can talk about the American government a little bit more, with NASA saying that they're going to have to delay their Titan drone mission Dragonfly by another year, slipping to 2027 due to external factors such as the COVID-19 pandemic. But this is something that I've been excited for since I was a kid. The idea of going to Saturn's moon Titan as well as Europa to go see what the heck is going on there is something very exciting. Essentially, a drone that's going to be put on there with a multi-rotor setup could allow us to see a lot more of these extraterrestrial bodies than we otherwise have before. Then we could talk about another space program. SpaceX is apparently cleared to start doing national security payloads for the first time, including some GPS launches that could be happening. This is part of the national security space launch mission, SpaceX going up in the world in the spacecraft industry. And what's also going up is apparently Netflix's new CGI anime for Resident Evil that should be arriving sometime next year with Claire and Leon. There's a teaser trailer that you can check out on YouTube right now, in case you're interested. And then while talking about TV series, Amazon The Boys is apparently getting a college spin-off show, which is quite intriguing. I've been enjoying the second season of The Boys. It's really dark. It's going places that I didn't want. I have to turn away more than I ever did with the first season, but there's a new college series spin-off that's supposed to be Hunger Games style competition, and we'll see if it works. It's supposed to be based on original material, not based on the comics, like the original TV series is. However, the Boys TV series also does stray quite far from the comics, so it's hard to say where it's going to go. And it's hard to say where Sony's going to go when it comes to their properties, because apparently Funimation is going to become a Game Pass bundle for 2 months. You get Funimation Premium or whatever the streaming is for 2 months with Xbox Game Pass perks reward system, which is highly intriguing because Funimation, owned by Sony, now being part of a Microsoft bundle. I hope that it means this, which it doesn't at all. This is just Brett hoping right here that PlayStation titles could come to Game Pass, because it is a Game Pass and Microsoft's going to pay Sony a lot of money for it, and they'll be like, yeah, we'll take your cash, give it to us. That would be happy for me, but it's likely not going to happen. This just means that if I get Game Pass Ultimate, then I could get the Funimation Premium Plus subscription for 2 months and finally finish Dragon Ball Super, because I only watched the series until half of the episodes were dubbed now, so I need to see the second half now that they're finally finished being dubbed. And I'm going to finish dubbing this episode of Hot News. Thank you for tuning into this, my friends. Let me know what you think of everything that's gone down in the world of RTX 3080 GPUs, as well as otherwise, down below in the comments. Hit the like button while you're down there. Get subscribed to stay up to date on all of our tech-related content. I'm Brett. Thank you for watching. Bye.